Charlie Munger will say, be careful, to the man with a hammer, the world looks like a nail. There's never one solution to anything. So as you install these new habits, getting back to the book, get me out of the hot seat.
Yeah, pressure's on, man.
You know, that's installing habits.
Yeah.
Getting rid of the good ones and putting in the bad ones. What do you think, Steve? Anything missing?
Nothing missing, but I do want to ask about this. It's kind of the advanced tactics he talks about. He talks about the Goldilocks rule, and it says, once an atomic habit has been formed, it's important to continue to advance in small ways. These small improvements keep you motivated. This is referred to as the Goldilocks zone. Have you experienced that beautiful zone?
So he uses the marathon reference. Just popped into my head, right? He's talking about, like, it's way overwhelming to run the marathon, but if you dedicate yourself to walking a mile, and then he says, all right, a week from now, run 2 miles, then do a 5K, and then so you not only do you maintain like that sort of momentum and that good feeling about yourself, but you're growing your ability and building a level of trust. So, but you asked if we have experienced that.
It goes up and then comes back down at some point, right? As it gets harder in the mind and in the body, and then it ultimately comes over and gets a little easier, if I'm not mistaken.
Because of the self-belief component? I don't remember the exact curve.
I remember it was a bell curve it was motivation and difficulty. It went all the way up till it was so difficult, and at some point it became easier. You do videos about it too, like when you cross over that threshold that you're just trying to do one step at a time, and then after a while it starts to become automatic. That is, I think that's when your habit kind of drops into the basal ganglia, which is that reptilian brain, where all automaticity is stored.
They say 30 or 60 days. There's like a numeric.
He addresses that too. I reread that book yesterday. He says habits are never finished.
Yeah.
He says a habit isn't a line to be crossed. It will get easier in your head, but it's a lifestyle to be lived.
Yeah.
It's like a forever change. If you want a habit of eating better, you don't want to eat better for 24 hours or for 24 days.
Right.
You need to decide, make the one decision that makes 1,000 and get rid of some types of food.
Yeah.
But it gets easier, and then it drops into the automaticity. Like going for a run every day, like we do bike rides every day. After a while, it's like I want to go on a bike ride before lunch.
Right.
It's not a habit; it's something I enjoy too.
Yeah.
That's something that he mentions as mastery of the field, where kind of like that S curve we mentioned when we were talking earlier. And he said, precisely at the moment when you begin to feel like you've mastered a skill, you must avoid complacency so you progress at the next level. The solution: establish a system for reflection and review. This will enable you to objectively see what's working, what isn't, and based on this, make better plans going forward. So it's this graph right here, if I could get it up.
Yeah.
And so that way you kind of, as soon as the other habit starts to die, you find motivation. And he says that's kind of the end of the Goldilocks rule, is that the greatest threat to success is not failure, but boredom. We get bored with a new habit because we're performing it every day and not seeing results. Realize that successful people feel the same lack of motivation as everyone else. The difference is that they still find a way to show up.
Oh, dude, I love that. It's a derivative of chaos, order, chaos, order, chaos, order.
Diminishing returns, right? The law of diminishing returns. You'll see that in ads when you run ads once you have a message, you run ads. Your ads do well, and at some point they don't. You probably see it with videos, right?
Right.
It goes up, and then it starts to level off and peter. That's interesting. The key is to catch yourself and to know your numbers. That's why you weigh yourself every day. If you want to be in a healthy weight, the only way to know that for sure is to weigh yourself, get the information. It tells the brain that you're performing.
Yeah.
If you don't, your brain knows no idea. There's no clue.
Right, and the repetition. You can tie it into the photographer thing. Right. You know, when he's talking about basically there's two groups, or he divides. A professor divides, a high school teacher, I forget, divides the class into two groups, and one group is the quantity group, and so their grade was based on the number of pictures. Like I think it was 90 is an A, 80 is a B, whatever. And then you had the quality group. They only had to submit one, and they'd only be graded on that one. It had to be perfect. It had to be the best they could do. In the quality group, through repetition, by far exceeded that of the quality.
Right.
Because they'd just done more, and so it's that curve manifested into real life.
Michael Jordan. most missed shots, Babe Ruth, most strikeouts.
Right.
That never ends. They take more shots. They win. We're knocking on doors.
Right.
The one who knocked on the most doors won. We were in the office one day, and my partner used to put he just did this without telling anybody. He had a counter on the phones back when we didn't have payphones. Mm-hmm. So every week, our agents would report how many phone calls they make at their desk, and they'd lie. It would be called the Liars Club. It's like, oh, I made 200 phone calls, and we'd look, and then we'd see they only made 16 or 20. Then he let them do it for a few months, and then we were sitting there one Christmas, and he whips out his phone log. For whatever sick reason, he never told anybody about it. We used to look at it and kind of chuckle. And at some point, we did tell him, but he said, look at this. And he said, look at the phone calls, look at the phone bill, and he goes, look at the parking lot. So we looked at the parking lot. Guess whose cars were out in the parking lot? It was Christmas around 3 o'clock, Christmas Eve.
People with the most reps.
The top 3 producers, they're making the most money, 3 cars were sitting in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Reps. They made the most calls. They had the highest phone bills. They made the most money.
Yeah.
They probably got the most no's. They had a habit. Badass habit.
That correlation will always be there when
Yeah.
you seek out become immune to the word no over and over and over and over and over again. You know?
Yeah. What's the no? The no, the salesman's creed. One no is one more step closer to a yes.
Yeah.
And no was worth. We used to sign we had a point system where we would know how much money you'd made with a no. So if you got 200 no's, you could go backwards and measure that to your income.
That's interesting.
You get a no. It's like, oh, there's $75. I'm gonna
Yeah.
go out and get 20 no's.
Yeah.
And you got it. And then we used to have a talk to go for the no. Make people say no to you.
Right.
People don't like saying no. It's like you don't want to do this. It's probably not for you.
Right.
It's not for everyone. Right.
Right.
We do that a lot.
In the world of social media and content creation, it's criticism and feedback. Essentially the same thing.
Right.
But worrying about what the response is going to be, limiting yourself based on potential feedback, pushback, whatever. And when you realize it's repetition, just keep posting because you'll get better, and not only that, you'll develop that category for yourself and that identity, but to removing yourself emotionally from the no and the anything that's not direct in line with what you want. Or at least you could say looking at the data, like looking at it analytically.
Right.
Looking at the data to help drive or merge, what's working and what you want, what you love.
There is a study. I think we talked about this in two episodes ago of how you look at yourself, your explanatory style. Mm-hmm. Seligman, who did the dog experiment, learned helplessness. He says, well, you can learn to be through positive psychology, that you can have a positive explanatory style and you can become immune to a lot of the disappointments in life, just being positive about it, which is interesting. There was lots of studies how people that were positive ended up sticking to things longer, even if they're not doing well necessarily. It's called the explanatory style.
So maybe let's stick to that then. The world of insurance. So one of the things he says is the golden rule of behavior, or cardinal rule of behavior. What's immediately reported is repeated, and what's immediately punished is avoided. All right, so my mind goes to like the door knocking,
Yep.
and it's like that's punishment in a sense. So how do you what is the framework to look at that as this sort of magnificent tool to excellence?
There was a psychologist, actually it was an insurance agent that worked with a psychologist, and he developed a point system, because what you need to do when you're developing a habit, you need to take what's good about the habit and somehow bring it forward.
Right.
And what's bad about the habit and bring it forward as well. So you could knock on a door and not make any money for 3 months. You could knock on a door, someone would engage you, but they wouldn't buy yet. But maybe 2 months later they'd buy, and a month later you get paid. So the behavior was today, the reward was waited tomorrow. Unlike a lot of habits. So they had a psychologist had a point system where you got a certain amount of points for getting that door. You got a certain amount of points for getting information. You got a certain amount of points to get permission to come back.
I love that.
So you get 4 points or 5 points. So you would go in on a Wednesday, you say, I had 20 points last week. And they had a point, and then you knew what a point made for you after you had enough data and your own experiment. So that's how they did it.
Yeah.
And it worked well, and it established habits of getting referrals, prospecting, and getting rewarded for the behavior that doesn't pay for a long, long time.
Right.
There's a big giant disconnect with activity and compensation in that space.